Hi, welcome to Chad's Silversmithing. In the past I've made a couple of rings and I don't know what they're called, but I call them illusion rings because they give the illusion that you have just some objects sitting on the back of your hand rather than you're wearing a ring, because you can't really see the band. And so I'm going to do one of those today, and I'll put some links in the video as well for some of the other ones I've done like that too. I think this is the third one of that sort that I've done. But I picked out a pretty pear-shaped aquamarine that I have that I got at the last show. It's about I think it was a 12 by 6 roughly. It should make for a good project and a pretty outcome, I think. So let's give it a try and see how it comes out. You'll have to forgive me if I'm a little nasally tonight. I seem to have an allergy issue today, so I apologize for that. This is one of my design idea sketchbooks you can get on my merch store. This one has flow temperatures of various types of solder. Some of the other ones have conversion charts for gauges to millimeters to inches or other conversions, or some other useful metal smithing information. So check them out because they're a great way to keep track of your projects. I filled up like 5 of these, which means I have like 600 different projects that I can refer to if I want to go back and try something that I tried a while back, or change it, or at least see how I did it so I don't reinvent the wheel each time. It's nice because then I have a resource that I can tap into when I'm struggling for ideas as well. So sometimes just looking at one thing gives you an idea. Alright, so here's what I had in mind for today. Let me show you the stone. Getting kind of a late start tonight too, so it's a pretty big aquamarine. It's got some inclusions in it which is not typical for good aquamarine. So I probably got this in a bargain bin somewhere and didn't pay all that much for it, but it's still a very pretty stone. It's just got a couple of flecks inside of it that you don't typically see in aquas. So hence the bargain bin. But it's still very pretty, so we're going to make a bezel setting for that. It's going to fit like that. We're going to have a design that kind of goes around it like this. I'm going to taper those things. I rolled out a little rounding it I had into some squarish wire. I think I'm going to use that. It's about 10 gauge, which is 2.6 millimeters or so. I'm going to make that V-shaped part out of this stuff in a single piece. I'll probably file it, a notch in it, and so we can bend it and then solder it at that notch, and then we'll shape the rest of it down. But the idea here is the bezel that we put this in here is going to be mounted right on the end of a piece of half-round wire, which is low dome half-round number 4, which is about 6 millimeters wide. So it's pretty wide, low dome half-round. Where is that stuff at? So it's pretty substantial for a band, but the reason I'm using it is because of that, because I want these two separate components are going to be perched on the end of it like a U-shaped piece. And so they need to be pretty stout so they don't bend very easily. And that's why I choose to use stuff like this for these kind of things. Also, this has a wide profile, but not half of a cylinder, which would make it harder to hide under the ends of these things. So when I make the bezel for this aqua here, it's going to have a lip on the inside, which we usually call a step, for it to sit on. And that step should allow me enough space to solder this to that bottom part. And this certainly should be wide enough if I design it like this to where I can hide that right under there, I think. So that way it'll look like this piece is sitting on top of the fingers and this piece is sitting on top of the fingers, and you won't be able to see where they come from. A complicating factor with this one is that the stone is relatively deep. If I'm going to bezel set it, I'm going to have to use 1/4 inch, which is really tall. I have some 26 gauge 1/4 inch. So we'll use that for the bezel, and we'll use 18 gauge round wire stacked in pear shape or teardrop shaped, soldered to the inside of the bezel to create that step. So we'll have to raise it up quite a bit, probably 3 layers at least. You could use flattened square wire or something to make that step if you wanted to. I just find it easier to adjust if I do it in a series of steps like that. It probably doesn't make a difference either way, but I think that's probably a good starting point. Oh, the bezel, 1/4 inch is 6.35 by 0.41 millimeters is the type of bezel I have here for those of you overseas. Or the rare North American who uses the metric system. Okay, so let's file a flat end on this. If you haven't been to my channel before, here's my torch setup and my flux and solder and everything are typical for me to use. So we're going to set it on the crown so the stone is upside down. It makes it easier to do this. It's tempting to put the solder joint for the bezel right at the tip of that, but that's usually a bad idea because it's going to make it harder to bend there with that solder in there. And you really don't want that spot to be extra hard to bend because that's the hardest spot to deal with when you set the stone anyway. So let's make a sharp bend like that kind of, and that'll be our point. I can flare these out and round them a little bit, just like that, since we have kind of a little rounded sort of shape there. Did you know that if you ingest too much silver, your skin and your gums start to turn blue? There's a name for the condition, I don't remember what it's called. But there was kind of a craze a while back where people were taking colloidal silver, which I'm not sure what colloidal means, but people were taking too much and it was making their skin turn blue. I'm not sure if it had any other physiological effects for people, but certainly most people wouldn't want to have blue skin. You look cold all the time. Or who was the race in the original Star Trek who were blue? It's the Andorians, I think, maybe. They had the weird little antennas on their head. I think they were blue. They were blue or green. I think there's a genetic disorder that also does something similar to your skin color. Did I file that one very well? Well, I did okay. I've done neater jobs. Alright, let's flux this and solder it closed. If you're new to this and are looking for project ideas, this one's probably going to be more of an intermediate project just because you're making a bezel for a faceted stone. So you might want to save this until you have a few bezels under your belt. Unless I really screw up in the project and have to start over or something, then it's going to be called a difficult rating, or it's going to have a difficult rating. Although that could totally be operator error on my part and not the actual project being difficult. I left that one point that we made for the point of the stone when I made that angular. Somebody will probably ask me why I made it square, and I usually do that mostly because I can set a little piece of solder nicely on a flat surface on the top of the bezel. Um, Plus, that's the way I always did it where I was taught to do it. There's not really any necessity. It just makes it easier to perch a piece of solder on there. What we'll need to do after we get this shaped is first check to make sure we got the size pretty close. You don't want to have a lot of extra room in there with a faceted stone sitting on a little lip. One thing about stones that have sharp points like this, like marquise and pear shapes or teardrops, if you have a really tight bezel, you can bust that right off. So I always put the tip in first when I'm checking the size. That way you're not popping that tip over the edge, which can sometimes cause it to break. And that's always a bummer when that happens. But I want it to be snug, but I don't want to break the tip off. So that looks like it's a pretty snug fit. I'm able to get it in there without any undue pressure on that. So I think that'll work out okay. Now we need to make that little ledge that I was talking about. Like I said, I think it's going to take 3 levels. This one I am going to have meat at the tip because these we're just going to solder in there, and we won't be bending that part, so there's no reason not to, and it might make it a little bit easier. So what you can do sometimes, find my belt. So pick one that's pretty close to the rounded part of your thing. Rounded part of your thing. That's what we call age-related word retrieval problems. I'm going to cut that off and we can gradually snip it down until it fits right in there. What do you think? If I cut it at the same angle as it's going to meet up with that one, I don't have to have 2 blunt ends on there. I'm going to have one end butt up against like that if I get the angle just right. So, if that makes any sense. Let's see where we're at. File it just a little bit down. I think the outsides need to be rounded out a little bit more to match that slightly better. That may result in this being just the right size too, if we're lucky. One thing to be aware of is, since we're going to be stacking these on top of each other and trying to create a flat platform for the stone to sit on, you want to make sure they're sitting flat when you're done. You haven't like kind of tweaked them in a weird direction or something. That's so tight it runs the risk of riding up, so you might want to be careful about that, because if you're not paying real close attention, when you get them all stuck in there, one of them could pop a little bit if it's really tight, right when you're getting ready to solder. So, well, let's try it and see how it goes, and we'll make another one. I think 3 layers will probably be plenty in order to pop it out of there. And then I'm going to take a few pieces of solder. First, I'm going to make sure this is pushed all the way down in every direction to the best of my ability. And let's put a number of these pieces on this flattish ceramic soldering block. Oh, incidentally, here's a link to the first one of these kind of rings that I did. I'll wait a little while and I'll add a link to the second one. I'm going to add a little bit more solder. Let's file that bottom pretty flat. Okay, that's pretty flat. So the next thing we need to do is we need to create this V kind of shape. We start there, get a rough idea. Probably be okay if we give myself just a little extra. This being kind of the center point. Then we'll measure the same amount on this other side too. It's a little rough on the end, so we'll leave ourselves a little bit of leeway. 10, 20, 30, 40, and then we'll find the center. Well, should we use the miter vise jig and get the end exactly flat? If you've never seen these are especially handy if you're new to this and have trouble getting nice flat edges. It just allows you to get a perfect 90-degree angle. Or in this case, a 45-degree angle if you just put it up there. So that's always kind of nice. There's a more expensive model too where you can get 60-degree angles as well. Which I should have not cheaped out, and I should have just got. We may end up cutting those shorter anyway, but at least we can start from a flat edge. Anyway, right there. So that goes to 23. Pretty close. Okay, so I'm going to use my little half-round jeweler's file. I'm trying to get a start in a little groove in that spot. Now I need to bend this pretty sharply, more than 90 degrees I think. So we're going to have to do kind of a wide notch here. If you do just like the edge of the file straight down, that'll give you a perfect 45-degree cut in there on both sides. They're pretty close. But if you want it to be a sharper angle, you have to widen it a little bit. Alright, so let's grab this and see if we can bend it pretty sharply there. That's kind of what I was thinking, like that. So I think let's go ahead and solder that closed, and then we can work on shaping it and filing it. This is a pretty big chunk of metal here, so it may take a little bit more heat than you might expect to get the entire thing up to temperature. Okay, so that's going to be there. This is going to be here. So it really needs to start bending. I need to kind of curve this a little bit. About there. So let's measure from the tip to there, and we'll measure from the tip to there on that side. So that's like 22 millimeters. Sort of liking that config, like that. We can bend these in further though. I guess we can always cut one off. Ouch. Let's see how we look here. I think before I cut anything else, I'm going to flatten this back out again. And let's make a little silver ball. I was thinking putting silver ball right there. Pretty good sized one. I kind of feel like I should hammer that a little flatter though. What if I did that? Actually, I think the next step is I'm going to taper these down a little bit. We'll see how that looks. We'll see where we're at. If you make balls in a little recess like that that you carve out with a ball burr, you get a little bit more symmetrical balls. So, which is good. You don't want asymmetrical balls, simply. I like that. That'll be fun. So let's solder the ball in. Alright, I'm going to do something called pick soldering, where I pick up a little bit of solder on the end of my pick. It allows me to place it pretty precisely. It's one of those tricks that changed the way I do things immensely because it opened up so many possibilities. So if you'd like to see my video about it, it's right up there. That's one of the... The sooner you learn how to do that, the easier it makes things, I think. Quite a bit more mass in the bigger piece here. And There's that ball. I want it to stick to both of them, so I need to get them both up to that same flow temperature. You know, pretty close to the same time. That actually sticks to both of them. That's not bad. We are going to have to create a band for this thing, and the band is going to have to create a U shape from about right here over to that crook where these meet, right about there. We need to take that a little further this way, probably. So right there. That's a pretty good width, probably. I suppose you could alter the size on one of these kind by just changing the depth of it, because your finger will squish in different directions. You know, so. Okay, let's spend a couple of minutes getting this file nice and flat and shaped, so it's a nice U shape. Here's my thought. Find a flattish sort of space here. This magnesia block. Magnesia block is a softer surface you can push stuff into. And I want these to have kind of the same size, or same height. So if I push this flush with that thing, then the bezel needs to go in a little bit further. You know, if I just heated the bezel and the band, there's already enough solder in that bottom of that piece probably to stick it to it. But let's do the better safe than sorry thing. I was making some minor adjustments as far as positioning and everything. I wanted this to point right to the center there. I was cleaning out some of that magnesia block that's stuck in there. And checking to see how I like this. And so far, I think I do. So typically that'll probably sit on somebody's finger here, but you can't see any band. It looks like it's just sitting on top of your finger like that. So that's the ultimate goal we want to have, where you can't see the band on this sort of ring. And so let's get that pickled up and we'll set that stone and see how things look. Okay, I've got this file down to the right height and everything. I've thinned out the top of the bezel just a skosh at the point. That's always a hard part to get pushed down. It's a little too much, trying to compress too much metal into too small of a space, but just kind of use this to push that over a little bit. And that's really what our ring's going to look like when it's worn. It kind of sits on top of the hand. Okay, well, I'll get that polished up. The last little bit on top of the bezel with the blue silicone polishing wheel, and then I'll get some better pictures. So tell me what you think. Tell me what you would have done differently. I'd like to hear your ideas. I find this one kind of pleasing. So okay, well, that was illusion ring number 3. I hope you enjoyed that. If you did, it would really help me a lot if you'd hit the like button. There's also a new feature on YouTube called hyping. If you could hype my video, that also helps as well. I'd really love it if you go check out my main channel page. I have over 650 videos now. I've been doing it for about 4.5 years at 3 per week, so it's quite an accumulation of content over there. There's lots of different projects. There's various types of skills, different levels of projects. Some things for beginners, some things for more advanced people. I really do like meeting new people and reaching a wider audience. So I also wanted to thank a couple of groups of people. First, my patrons over on Patreon are my core group of supporters. They provide not only financial assistance, they also have created a really nice community of artistic folks over there, and we've got a little forum where we can post pictures of what we're working on and ask for input and ooh and ah over each other's jewelry. It's a nice place, and I really wanted to thank them for making it that way. So you guys are awesome. My other group is my YouTube subscribers, and we just passed 18,700, I believe. We're getting close to 18,800, if I remember. That's amazing. Thank you for that. I can't believe I have that many people subscribed. I really like the comment section, though. You guys continually add useful information and advice that not only I get to read, but other people get to read as well. And I think that creates an environment where learning is the focus rather than critiquing or one-upping each other or any of that kind of stuff. So thanks for making it a positive environment with and a resource for people other than me. Although I do certainly find it a resource because I've learned so much from you guys. So thanks for that as well. I appreciate the financial contributions, the buy me coffees, super thanks, people buying merch from my store, ebook sales, all of that stuff contributes to maintaining this channel and makes it possible for me to do this. So thanks in advance if you choose to do that. Thank you if you've already done that. Don't forget to hit the video description down below. There's information about this video as well as some important links. There's a link to my merch store. There's a link to my Patreon if you want to find out more about that platform and community. There's a link to my newest ebook if you want to get a guide to 2025's tutorials. I have a page in there for each tutorial I did last year, and I think there's over 170 tutorials. And on each page there's a link to the video itself, but there's also extra information about it. There's pictures of the sketches I drew, pictures of the final outcome, a list of materials that it takes to make the project, stone information if it had a stone in it, extra notes I took about what I learned from it, or if I do it differently the next time, or if I liked it or not, and why. So I think it's a really useful resource. It gives you tons of projects right at your fingertips, and it's a nice way to support my channel. So you can even get the 3 different years I've done that as a package deal with $15 off. There's one for 2023, 2024, and 2025. You just got to look for the special 3 book deal. All right, well, thanks for watching today. Take care. Happy silversmithing.